difficult, duties are many, and responsibilities heavy. Therefore, we pray for our elected leaders gathered in this chamber and all who assist in their work. As a people, Lord God, renew our faith, strengthen our hope, enlighten our understanding, enlarge our charity. Through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. In the Lord's Prayer, our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, and we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, power, and
This House is now in session. Minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, December the 17th to be confirmed.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that those minutes be taken as read.
Second, please.
Seconded, please. If there are no corrections or observations, then let those minutes stand confirmed.
Yes, sir.
Minutes of meeting held on Friday, the December 20th, 2019 to be deferred.
Speaker, I beg to move that those aforementioned minutes be deferred.
Seconded?
Second, please. Second.
Seconded.
Second.
Yeah. Those minutes are now deferred.
Announcements by Your Honor, the Deputy Speaker. Messages from Her Excellency, the Governor General. Petitions, papers.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I am commanded to lay the audited financial statements of the Board of Management of the Darrell Jordan Secondary School.
Jeffrey.
Yeah.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I am commanded to lay the Barbados Health Report 2019.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I am commanded to lay the Fire Service Fees Order 2020.
Government notices, private members' notices, notices of questions, reports from select committees, first readings of bills. The first reading. Do you want it? Do it?
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I beg to move the first reading of the Public Transport Miscellaneous Provisions Bill 2020.
Second, please.
Seconded? Okay. Question is that this bill be read the first time. All those members in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it.
Statements by ministers, congratulatory and/or obituary speeches, personal explanations, motions for leave of absence, oral replies to questions, notices of motions for the adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance, orders of the day.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of Standing Orders 6, 16, 18, 20, 42 subsection 5, 43, and 44 be suspended for the remainder of today's sitting.
Seconded. The question is that those standing orders so mentioned be suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting. All members in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. Government business is now the order of the day.
Order number 10, sir. In the name of the Honourable Minister of Housing, Lands and Rural Development, to move the passing of a resolution to approve in accordance with Section 5 of the Land Acquisition Act, Chapter 228, the compulsory acquisition by the Crown of the parcel of land, the property of Marriott Barbados Limited, situate at Harry Smith in the parish of St. Philip in this island, for the public purposes of housing and tourism development.
Member for St. Andrew.
Mr. Speaker, before I begin my presentation, it is worth noting that the Leader of the Opposition, I don't know if this is an indication of overtures which he intends to make to this side, but for the first time is clad in gear for the first time that is close to red. And I don't know what is responsible for his conversion, but it is very noticeable. I hope that yellow is not the next one. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, this is the resolution for the acquisition of 26 acres of land at Harry Smith St. Philip for the public purpose of housing and tourism development. The Cabinet on the 19th of September met and decided on the acquisition of this parcel of land. The land itself was found to contain a total of 10,909 I don't know, or rather let's deal with the acres. 26 acres of land in parcel A and 20 acres in parcel B. A total of 2.4933 hectares or 6 acres. That is the second parcel. The areas are delineated on a plan by Camille Belgrave, Land Surveyor, and recorded in the Lands and Surveys Department on the 12th of October 2017. Mr. Speaker, it is proposed that a portion of this land, although we have not yet identified that area, will be vested in the National Housing Corporation for the housing program of the National Housing Corporation. It is also proposed, Mr. Speaker, that we will develop a joint venture program whereby we will refine and build going forward on the proposals which will be made by the public sector. I'll get back to that. But in terms of the compensation, the lands are valued at $10 million. And we are trying, with respect to compensation going forward, to ensure that as soon as possible after an acquisition, that the relevant settlement will be made. I say this because over the years, successive governments, not just the former administration, but the Barbados Labour Party when they were in government, I think that they have been somewhat tardy. We have been somewhat tardy in paying compensation to persons whose lands we have acquired. However, I would say, though, that in 50% of these cases, the delay or the failure of government to pay has not been any negligence or delinquence on the part of government, because in many areas, persons have sought. We do not know whether or not they recognize that, or they believe that government has some money tree, and that because it is government, they could extract large sums of money from government. We've had a recent acquisition by government where the landowner was disputing a valuation of $4 million, of $2 million, of $4 million, But when it came to time for the acquisition, they're disputing a valuation of $4 million, and they are saying that the land is not worth any more than $2 million. And we have correspondence for 5 successive years where this landowner sought to have the land taxes reduced to $2 million. But lo and behold, government decides that they're going to acquire the property. And you know, Mr. Speaker, we got a valuation for $39 million. Out of the blue. Out of the blue. We got a valuation for $39 million. And the public out there sometimes believes that government purposefully decides that they're going to, or rather arbitrarily take away somebody's land and then they don't want to pay them. We have situations where, I mean, if you go to the lower end, I mean, although there might be some justification, because I know that my family was a victim of this, lands which were acquired at 17 cents a square foot, and then those same lands were sold at, I think it was $20 land in Dingtown, $20 per square foot. That is at the other end. But in most cases, the difficulty or the failure of government to pay compensation is because of the fact that the landowner has refused to accept the sums which government has advanced. I mean, our government don't come up with an arbitrary figure because the Land Acquisition Act is fairly clear. And the valuation, it doesn't necessarily mean that if a government acquires land in 2020, and there's a hotel development or some major development which would send up the market value of that land, say that the market value of that land might be $100 per square foot in 2020. But that land might have been acquired in 2010. In 2010, when there was no development, and the valuation is assessed at that time, at the time of the Section 3 notice. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, you have a very interesting case in St. George, where we have made an acquisition, and the owner has refused to accept the monies which have been offered by government. And he has refused because out of the blue, a developer, an international developer, has seen this land. They realize that it is a parcel of land that could be utilized for major housing development for the upper middle class, upper middle income. And they have offered him 10 times the value. 10 times what was the value when government acquired the land.
In 2002.
And he would want us to pay him that amount. But it can't happen.
Can't happen.
It just can't happen. And we've got a lot of instances of that. And, you know, it is false for us, for the public to believe that government has been acquiring land and refusing to pay. I mean, the incidents, the acquisition that I referred to with respect to the $4 million that they're now claiming, $39 million, government was willing to pay immediately.
Right.
As a matter of fact, we were willing to go by private treaty. And we only go the process of compulsory acquisition when negotiations have broken down.
Yeah.
We try, and as a former Minister of Housing, Mr. Deputy Speaker, you would know.
Yeah.
Sometimes negotiations are ongoing. Sometimes we extend them even though at the disadvantage of a project. Sometimes for as long as 2 years. I mean, sometimes you think you have an agreement, and then at the last minute, there's a change. And the agreement to which I refer, I think that it is relevant, very relevant, that we should mention that. We have had discussions with that particular owner or individual from the 20th of May when we came, 20th of May, when we came to office. And we thought we had an agreement on 10 occasions. On 10 occasions, we thought we had an agreement with that particular individual.
Yeah.
And every time we thought we had an agreement, they came back. They wanted more. And even though we knew that according to the Land Acquisition Act, because if you're going by private treaty, well then, there is no limit.
Right.
And we went from $2 billion of the valuation all up to $10 million. And we still no agreement. And then at the last minute, we went to $12 million. No agreement. So these are the difficulties that we face in terms of these acquisitions. There are occasions, too, with respect to these acquisitions, where not only we thought we had an agreement, but we were so sure that we paid the money into court. At this moment, I can't tell you how much money we have paid into court that is resting in the coffers of the Treasury. Because if we agree to pay, if we make an agreement and we agree to pay in 2003, and then you decide to take the money 20 years after, you can't claim interest. Can't claim interest. You can't claim there are other things that you cannot claim. And there are millions of dollars, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Millions of dollars we have paid into court for acquisitions, and the owners have refused. In my own constituency, I recall there was an acquisition which was done shortly before I came to Parliament. And I came to Parliament in 1991. And the lady involved, the owner involved, she indicated that the money that was being paid is not enough. She's not going to, she would rather die than accept the amount. You know what happened? She died. And the thing about it is that she had no kids. No kids. She did not leave a will. And, in the cases of these estates, sometimes you have about as much as 100 people wanting to claim. And the agreement, the ministry was willing to pay. And that matter could very well thrash out for another 10 years. Because government now is in a position where somebody has to take out letters of administration. And if nobody takes out letters of administration, well, then you have a problem. And because of the warring among the parties, the letters of administration will take a long time. One body has applied for letters of administration. Somebody has filed a caveat. Another person has filed another caveat. And the matter is just there in abeyance. And then you will get persons who do not understand the type of problems that we face in the Ministry of Housing and settling these matters would say that government acquired it to take this poor old lady's property. The poor old lady, all she has is this land, and we took her land, and we did not compensate her. And she died before getting her money, but that was her choice. That was her choice. We are willing to settle the matter. I know you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'm not talking out your business. And
Yes, of course.
If I am talking out your business, or if I'm if I'm strained, just let me know and I will stop.
No, I want you to talk fully.
But we are willing to
fully.
settle the matter, that matter. We can settle that matter tomorrow.
Yes, I'm aware of
Tomorrow. And just to give you an idea, in the estimates for 2019-20, we put $15 million in the estimates for compensation. Now, you know that when the last time I checked, only 200 and something thousand had been utilized, which means that money will lapse.
Jeez.
So that if your charge, Mr. Deputy Speaker, had accepted the amount of money that was offered by government, it means that matter would have been resolved.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of matters like this. And the last time I checked, government, the amount of money that government owes for acquisitions. And I'm not including interest. I'm not including any additions for the various other inconveniences that the victims of compensation might have. $136 million.
Yeah.
136 million. Now, if you add on the interest and the other little things, the variables or whatnot, it may very well come to over 300.
This 136 is money
Money that
for,
is
for acquisition.
for acquisitions. For acquisitions only. It's $136 million. That $136 million would involve monies which have been agreed and monies which have been assessed by the Barbados Revenue Authority as the amounts which are outstanding. And the thing about it is that under the program, there's certain arrangements where government's contingent liabilities could be settled. And we are in a situation where we can't deal with that, deal with these acquisitions. We can't deal with this aspect of the compensation. Because notwithstanding the fact that we know the figure in terms of what the Land Acquisition Act says.
Right.
And the Land Acquisition Act is very, very clear, very precise. I mean, sometimes I wonder why people try to I don't want to use the wrong word, but, you know, why they come up with some of these exorbitant prices when it is very clear, crystal clear in the Land Acquisition Act how much money you are entitled to in case of a government acquisition.
But if its valuation is disputed, who determines the correct valuation?
Now, well, Mr. Speaker, you've asked a very interesting question. The Land Acquisition Act is not a recent statute, and in a lot of these statutes, we need to go and do some surgery on them. And I think that we need to do surgery on the Land Acquisition Act. It is something that we have spoken to for years, and we haven't done anything about it. It is deficient in many aspects, but in terms of what we are discussing, the question of interest, it does not set out a specific sum for interest. But it did state that if a person put in a claim under the Land Acquisition Act, if you put in a claim and you go to court, the matter has to go to court. The judge has a discretion to impose an interest, a figure, not exceeding 6%.
Okay.
So in other words, the Land Acquisition Act doesn't make any provision for any interest. It doesn't make any provision outside of this provision. So that if government decides that the valuation of the land is $3 million, the valuation you're claiming, or take the position with respect to the one that I spoke about.
Right.
The recent acquisition where the government's valuation is $4 million, is $4 million, and the individual was claiming that it's $2 million so that she would pay a lower tax.
Oh.
The amount to which that person would be entitled is only $2 million. $2 million and no interest. If they accept it,
Right.
the interest only comes into play if you go to court. So there's no figure with respect to interest. So there's no interest payable, and in terms, I'm dealing specifically with the question for which you pose, where the parties cannot agree. The Act itself did not make provision for any arbitration. What has happened is that the Ministry of Housing, as the person responsible for the acquisition, they have set up over the years a process where there are certain officers from the Barbados Revenue Authority, certain officers in the property management unit, certain persons with experience in valuation, quantity surveying, quantity surveying and that sort of thing. A committee actually get together and deal with that. But that committee,
The Standing Valuation Committee.
Standing Valuation Committee. So that standing valuation committee is not something that is recognized in the Land Acquisition Act. So, I mean, a person would very well be advised. If it was a lawyer representing any client and they came to the land value, I said, well, look, you better sit down and see if you could get as much as you can, because, the chances are, if you go to court, it's going to take, sometimes it takes, from what I've seen in the files, and it is not fault on the part of the court system. Because sometimes you go to court, and just what I am telling you now, we had a recent valuation, I think the one in 6 months,
Right.
where the judge, the Court of Appeal, the judge in the Court of Appeal actually told the lady, as the owner, as much. I think that you better go back and talk with the officers in the Ministry of Housing and see if we could get what you could get from this matter, because I'm not so sure that what you are claiming you will be able to get. They didn't say that, not in those words, Mr. Deputy Speaker. But any lawyer advising anybody with respect to an acquisition should actually encourage them at least to sit down and even going to court is not going to help them. Sometimes it takes as much as, sometimes it goes on and goes because of the fact that, you, in your head, you think that you could get X dollars, and you need that third party, whether it's your lawyer or somebody else, to tell you to drive some sense in you. And another one we had one recently, which was settled only recently, where the owner, they were claiming $11 million, $11 million, and the person who they had as a valuer, he had, when I counted the meetings that they had with with the Ministry of Housing and the Standing Valuation Committee, and I'm not exaggerating, there were about 20 meetings, 20 meetings in 1 year in order to resolve this matter. And there were other meetings. I believe that overall, in a space, this acquisition started in 2003. And it was only completed this year, because we are making an effort to bring closure to all of these matters.
Right.
And they were claiming $11 million. So that it was only settled after he died a few months ago. I'm not so sure if he was still alive, if that matter would not have been settled. So the question of compensation is one. I think that the Act needs to be very, 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 very clear with respect to compensation. The market value at the time of the Section 3 notice, the notice under Section 3 of the Land Acquisition Act. And, the acquisition generally takes much longer than that to complete. The question of interest should be settled. The question of the payment to persons who might be inconvenienced, but who might be owners, who might be occupying the premises, must be made clear in the situation which I mentioned. The owner is putting in a claim for somebody who is not the owner of the property. Because if I have my property and I rent it out to somebody, and that body is doing very well, you can't come as owner and claim the value of the land based on the monies that is being made by the business. You can't do that. It is true that the Land Acquisition Act does not allow that, but I believe there should be clarity with respect to things like that. So I just thought I would mention. I would mention this question of compensation.
Yes, that's relevant.
Because it is very, very, very relevant.
That's right.
And I think that the owners should be aware. I don't anticipate any problems with the owners in this development, but I think that this should be made abundantly clear. Now, I did mention the question of housing development in conjunction with the joint venture partners. Sometimes when you speak to certain matters, seeing the problems which we have encountered in the last decade. People sometimes tend to think that you are harping all the time on what transpired between 2008 and 2018. But 2008 and 2018, what transpired during that period in terms of the governance of Barbados during that period, is what has created the problems which we are facing. I mean, you have only yesterday had a meeting with the officers in the Ministry of National Housing Corporation, and I've asked them to do a costing with respect to the lots which have been were sold, and the developments which they did during the last 10 years. I mean, and it is appalling. On almost each development, we have had losses as high as $2 million. $2 million. River. You'll be familiar with River, Constance St. George, Lancaster, parish land. I mean, and what is worse that during that period, a number of contractors were handpicked. I mean, these things need repeating. The public needs to know this. Were handpicked. There were persons who have reported that they wanted to get into construction, and they were actually called by certain functionaries in the government and told to set up a company. No knowledge whatsoever of building construction. Absolutely none. As a result, as I speak, I think at River and at parish land, the National Housing Corporation is now called upon to complete houses which were constructed by private contractors without anything going out to tender. You pick up the phone, I don't know who did it. You know, and we have been trained. I mean, we will find out. I hope we find out eventually, because a lot of things are coming to light. A lot of people, I must tell you that in the last 6 months or so, I don't know if it has anything to do with the fortunes of the former member for St. James South. But I can tell you, in the last 6 months, we've had a lot of calls from people. We've had calls from people who have indicated the circumstances how they got the contract.
Wow.
And there are persons who call. They don't want to put pen to paper, but I believe in time they will. And will tell you that they were told that you're going to get this contract, but X amount would have to be put aside for a certain individual or certain institution. Jeez. And the National Housing Corporation is suffering from that right now. Parish land, I think, I don't have the numbers, but I think the parish land, I think there were, I have the file here.
Just take your time, member. You have unlimited time.
Parish land, 117 houses. And we are still completing houses for a contract which began more than 10 years ago. And the amount of contractors that you had on that site, I think there were about 5 or 6 contractors. They have gone practically scotch-free. Riverview, St. Philip, Ministry, the National Housing Corporation. Say what you like about the National Housing Corporation. The National Housing Corporation, without the National Housing Corporation, the whole government housing program would collapse.
Yeah.
And they have now been trying their best. We are the completion of these houses close to fruition. And even though when we came to office, a number of those contractors had failed to satisfy their contractual commitments to the National Housing Corporation, you know, the last government did absolutely nothing. So a person might get $200,000 for a contract. They get the $200,000, but yet the house has to be completed. And National Housing Corporation now has the responsibility of completing those houses. So it is very important that we have transparency in the selection of contractors, in ensuring that these houses are built by reputable contractors, and maybe even if I don't want to say reputable contractors, the member of the leader of the opposition might have a friend in his constituency that might be building houses, but they might not be reputable, but he might know that that individual is not a dishonest person. And at least the transparency could extend to that individual. So we have to be very careful. Recently, we have, in terms of housing designs, we've done an RFP for housing designs, the type of designs that we would like replicated throughout the development, so as to stop some of the ghetto type housing developments that you are seeing, where you just have 100 units lumped together. I don't want to mention any particular area, but there are some of them, and I think that with this intervention with respect to the RFP which we just put out, we, in doing the joint venture, we would have to ensure that the designs are done in an orderly manner. And Mr. Speaker, this is not the only acquisition. We hope that we would be able to satisfy the housing needs in this country. It is a Herculean task, saying that in the 10 years, you know, the Minister of Housing during that period would come to us, to do a project, and I forgot to take the medication that the member for St. George South took last night.
You mentioned your friend for medication.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker. There are a number of acquisitions that we have to deal with in this term. You know, they used to say when the Barbados Labour Party was in government, we were building up a land bank, and we were not doing anything housing. But you know that when they came to office, Country Towers is a good example. They packed their back for Country Towers, but everything was in place.
Right.
All the designs. You know that when they came to government in 2008, everything, all they had to do was to walk it. It would have been good. See the problems we have, especially with squatting and things like that. I know Minister Prescott is not here. You know, the thrust of this government to make sure that everybody is housed and has at least security of tenure. You know, it'd be good if they had done what we had done, in that they had acquired, and even if they didn't acquire, they had gone out there and they had made sure that all the land available to government, that they had done the relevant subdivisions.
Yeah.
We would have been able, right now we would like, and the Prime Minister is very firm on this, the question with the squatters in Rock Hall. I'll come back to that. But we would like We would like to deal with that situation once and for all. Squatting in Barbados, once and for all. A rich person don't squat. Sometimes you have to have sympathy for people who are squatting. People squat out of necessity. But we would like to go and put up 500 houses as I speak. By the end of this financial year, when I say the end of this financial year, by the 31st of March, if they had done what they were supposed to do. If the designs were in, the infrastructure were in, roads, everything was in. So lo and behold, we now have been stumped. Because despite our vision in that direction, despite what we would like to do for the poor people in Barbados, I know that there are a lot of people who are saying, oh, you're doing this for the squatters, but yet, I mean, there are a number of individuals who have been applying for housing for years and have not been able to get their problems sorted out. But you're dealing in Rock Hall with issues pertaining to security, health concerns, persons who have built their houses on a dump. You know, every time I hear a news flash, I mean, as Minister of Housing, I get a little rattled and I feel a little worried because I'm wondering whether or not there's not some explosion on the dump in Rock Hall. I'm wondering whether or not an airplane has not crashed because of something that has happened in Rock Hall. So this is urgent. And I'm saying that if the last administration had done what they were supposed to do, we would have been able to go and put up 600 houses in one area, 300 houses in another area. But this is not so. So even though the situation is urgent, we still have to follow the law. We still have to go, as I speak, the areas that we would like to move on immediately in order to rectify the problem that we have found at Rock Hall. It is true that it goes back years ago, and I must say that before 2008, the Barbados Labour Party government had made attempts to deal with the problem in Rock Hall, but for 10 years, for the 10 years of the last decade, they did absolutely nothing. I mean, and the type of problems that we have now, if you realize now that if you have a major catastrophe in terms of our security concerns, in terms of health, I mean, the Minister of Health called me around the time when we were doing the site visits in a panic. Because, I mean, he likes to read a lot, and he was reading about the problems that could happen in terms of an explosion, and he didn't read it properly. He thought there would have been an explosion the week after. But then I had to console him. Oh, no. These are possibilities. So, I mean, we have, you know, we're in a serious situation. And the question of squatters, a squatter is not a Vincentian or a St. Lucian or a Guyanese. A squatter. I mean, the problem that we are facing now is a national problem. It's a Barbados problem. And we have to ensure that we deal with the question of with the squatters, the problems that are faced, the risks that are faced with respect to the squatting at Rock Hall. A number of them, I mean, I must say that if you see the houses in Rock Hall, I mean, you have to, notwithstanding what any illegality in terms of the act of squatting, the type of structures that they have put up. I mean, you know, and it would seem as if even there were. I mean, it is not a ghetto settlement. they have utilized the type of advances in technology, I mean, that the average person would not think about. And while the structures might be illegal, we have got to ensure that in the interest of security and for health reasons, that we actually bring some closure to the problem in Rock Hall. We cannot obviously promise them that we will be able to build back the type of houses that they have. They will still have to pay. There will be a cost to the movement from the area of Hall to other areas. And we have proposed that for persons below the poverty line, that there will be a grant of $25,000. So those persons who have put up big structures on the land, I mean, obviously they would incur some loss. But what we will do is that we have located certain areas where they will be allowed, subject to the type of designs that we would like, so that we don't want it to be a ghetto area. They would be allowed access, ownership of the land over a period of time. Initially, they will pay rent. The houses will be constructed, as I said, in accordance with certain designs, the areas that we have identified. Carpenter's Glade, Dodds Plantation. I know that some people might not want to, I don't remember the district, the other name for the district, Dodds, saying that there might be some connotation with respect to that particular area. But we have put in the designs. We are presently working with the Ministry of Transport and Works. It is hoped that what we will be able to do is to go in and do the road works. Ministry of Transport will do the road works. The construction, obviously, have taken into consideration houses for low-income persons. We are hoping that with this intervention, we will be able to have a reduction in the cost of houses as we know it for low-income persons. And hopefully, after these designs, after these road works have been completed, we will then be able to start the reciting of persons from Rock Hall to the areas that are earmarked. Chance Hall, St. Lucie, that's another area that has been earmarked. Fairy Valley Ridge, Carpenter's Glade, Parish Land. All these areas are being worked on now as I speak. As I said, it is hope. I certainly would like that at the end of our term, the question of our first term. The Attorney General is always famous for correcting me, although he's not always correct. That we would have arrested this quarters problem. I know that people in the other areas might say, well, I mean, how comes Rock Hall, you give it Rock Hall priority? As I mentioned, the health and the security concerns. But the other areas will be dealt with as well. The Bell. We're hoping that if we restore the Bell, I think the Prime Minister has already spoken about that. Most of the areas, Licorice Village, that those persons, we could give security of tenure to those persons. What we would also like to state that there's quartering in a number of areas, and in areas which are not owned by government. Government has no control whatsoever with respect to squatting on private lands. But what government can do, I mentioned the SOAR of the area in the belt, we can acquire those lands which are not owned by government, and then by the process of transfer of title, consistent with or analogous to the Tenantries Freehold Purchase Act, we would then be able to do conveyances for all of those people. And it is so that we'll be able to do that. It is planned, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that we will do that for the people in Licorice Village, for the people in My Lord's Hill, for the people in Six Bends. And Six Bends has been something ongoing for a long time. As I speak, the surveyors of the Ministry of Housing, they are actually on the ground today as I speak, surveying the whole areas. And when I speak to Six Bends, sometimes you have to, in the excitement of the political directorate to bring certain legislation to Parliament, sometimes there are certain areas that they omit. And you, as Minister of Housing, you know that we've had to do some surgery to the Tenantries Freehold Purchase Act.
Right.
But I think that if the surgery was done, well, it would not have been surgery if the operation to the Tenantries Freehold Purchase Act had been done in a way whereby people near the foreshore or the lands that are occupied could have been separated from the other lands. You wouldn't have a problem with Six Bends, because those persons are Six Bends. If the Tenantries Freehold Purchase Act had encompassed the areas that they had occupied, because the Six Bends was considered to be part of the foreshore because of the fact that it was part of a larger area which encompassed the foreshore. I mean, and that was unfortunate. I don't think that it is something that anybody thought about at the time. But if had that operation been done with the Tenantries Freehold Purchase Act, there would be no problem with squatting in Six Bends. All of those persons would have been able to get their conveyances under the Tenantries Freehold Purchase Act. What we are hoping that we would be able to do is, having acquired the lands under the Tenantries Freehold Purchase Act, all of the tenants will then be given the right to purchase under the Tenantries Freehold Purchase Act. It's a question whether or not we have to make a decision whether or not we would use using the Tenantries Freehold Purchase Act, we would designate that area as a plantation tenantry, in which case the price would not be $2.50 per square foot, but it would be 10 cents per square foot. So it is hoped that that is the decision that we would have to make, because if we designate that area, because it was part, as you know, Mr. Deputy Speaker, well, you lived on a plantation, but I'm not so sure you might be fully aware. But most or all of the lands in Barbados were part of a plantation. So I don't see anything wrong with and we would have to come back to Parliament to schedule that as a tenantry, in which case we would be able to sell the land to them under the tenantries at 10 cents per square foot. So the question of the squatters' settlement would not be an issue. So I had to give that background with respect to the squatters' settlements, because some people especially those persons who have applied to the National Housing Corporation and who have not been able to get not even a unit.
Yeah.
They may wonder, you're helping people who have broken the law, but you're not helping us who are straight.
Right.
But it is not that, as I said, with respect to Rockall. It is strictly a question of the security concerns. And I must go back to the last decade, and we must not forget, we can repeat it. Don't mind people saying, wow, comes, you're always talking about what happened during the 10 years of the Democratic Party government. I mean, good Lord, if you are making the people in the units believe that you are giving them a concession, you are giving them something. But then, and you're dealing with housing. You have 30,000 people who want houses. They're new. But they have 4,000 units. Now, rather than giving away the units to persons and having a graduation system, and this is the thing that we have to repeat over and over and over again until we could get this housing situation with the units sorted out. If they had created 4,000 more units and then decided then, well, we are going to give away the units. Not that they should have given away the units. You know? I mean, and it hurts me. When my colleagues would come and tell me, listen, but I have been put in a unit. I have a lady in my constituency, and she needs a unit, and there are 2 lots, there are 2 units. I mean, I'm the member for Christchurch West, who is in this house because of his commitment to his constituents. Not that the others are not, but I could speak for him. He's always on my back. I know 3 houses are vacant. And, you know, you worry and you go to, and sometimes you want to create a little ruckus at National Housing Corporation. And when you go, you realize that these houses have been given away by the government. The persons whose, I don't want to say, to use the wrong word, given away and being utilized for all sorts of purposes. Sometimes I have them rented out. Some they use as storerooms, storage. I mean, and then I have to come back and tell my colleague who has promised me good things in Whitehill, Minister of Public Works, and I'm going to keep him to that promise.
Start, though.
Yeah.
We need to start.
You know, I have to come back and say, you know, those units belong to this particular individual, and he is a senior government officer, and he lives in Rendezvous. And a unit is the, I mean, I don't know. I mean, sometimes you wonder, the Attorney General, who likes to stick to the letter of the law, always telling you that you can't do things retroactive. You got to follow the law. But there should be a way where you should be able to go and deal with that matter immediately. We had about 40, I think it was 4,200, I can't remember the specific figure, 4,200 units, and 2/3 of those were given away like that. I'm not saying that you might not want to accommodate individuals, certain individuals who have been good tenants for over a period of time, and where over a period of time the relatives have been living in the land, in the units. But you should have a graduation process. And that is where we were in 2008.
That's right.
In 2008, with the assistance of the programs we put in place, you were Minister of Housing, the $50 million bond issue, the Housing Credit Fund, the General Workers Loan Fund. And you graduate from those units and start homes. I mean, a lot of people benefited, despite what other people say, from these starter homes. You graduate and then you leave those houses so that we will be able to satisfy those 30,000 people. But no, they didn't do exactly. Nothing like that they did. So I have to tell my colleagues, sometimes they even say, well, nothing is happening in housing, and they're correct. So we also have that problem. That problem where 2/3 of the housing stock, the units were taken out by the last government, and they did absolutely nothing to replace it. And to add insult to injury, I mean, I've said it already and I will repeat it as often as possible. You had a CDB loan, $100 million. Housing, the housing neighborhood upgrade. Sent back $47 million. I can't remember the figure, but the member for St. Thomas is not normally incorrect. They actually had, I mean, right now we are struggling. We are struggling. We are trying out the Minister of Economic Affairs has been telling me how difficult it will be in order for us to get a loan
Investment, yeah.
for the housing program. But we are struggling to get a little $30 million house, $30 million loan from the Caribbean Development Bank. Right? We are struggling. She looked, the minister might look a little puzzled, but we are probably doing it on our own. Not on our own, but
With assistance.
to construct only 122 units. 122 units. And you know that if they were interested in housing this nation, if they were interested in poor people, because the member for St. Lucie liked to use that word. You know, I heard that word in this house for a long time. Apart from any minister from the member for St. Michael East, poor people. You know, if they were interested, we would not be in this. These houses would have been constructed. So not only did they give away the units, 2/3 of the units, and then they refused to take up the $100 million from the CDB. The loan was approved and everything, and they did everything to frustrate it. The housing neighborhood program didn't come to fruition. It came to fruition, but they didn't do anything. And now we are struggling in these economic times in order to get ourselves at a level where we could say that we have done at least something to alleviate the housing shortages in this island. But notwithstanding that, we will still press on. We will still press on. We have, we still have a program whereby the type of initiatives that we had started prior to 2008 will continue. And we are hopeful that with a resurrection of the Housing Credit Fund,
Right.
we might not be able to get the General Workers Loan Fund in the way how it was, but we are hoping that we would be able to do something to alleviate the problems of which we face. We're still looking at, we still have Lancaster, so that we could put, as part of the new trust, 180 lots at Lancaster. And interestingly enough, asked the last administration during the last decade, what land did they acquire for housing? What land did they acquire for housing? You know, and I don't want to mention, I will have to mention Coverley at some other point in time. We don't have the time to mention that. But the generous proposals that were put to develop that Coverley is mind-boggling. Mind-boggling. I spoke of the joint ventures being not being done in the way how it should be with any transparency, and not being done without any transparency. We are struggling in West Terrace, but I don't really want to go to that, because I mean that is a matter which might be the subject of certain action as I speak. Chancery Lane, another acquisition of the Barbados. We're hoping that we'll be able to have 200 lots there. Colleton, 71 lots. Parish land, we're hoping that we'll be able to do an extension of 20 lots at a parish land. And not to mention the ribbon development. We spoke, I think the Prime Minister would have spoken to the planning gains. Mm-hmm. The planning gains, whereby persons who are developing land in certain areas will be given back to government at no cost. Certain lands for housing. Searles Plantation is a classic example. And then there are lands which are owned by government. And we are hoping to put in the type of ribbon development which the Minister in the Ministry of Housing, the member for St. John, will speak to. As I speak, we're hoping that we can get. I mean, I'm not saying that it is guaranteed. You know, and you know the thing that really fascinates me and makes me feel that at least we have the interests of the people at heart. The excitement of officers in the Ministry of Housing who have been sitting down, not being allowed to use their talents. And when we look at what we can do in terms of the planning gains and the ribbon development, and you come up with certain proposals, I was astounded. The Chief Surveyor, having had a discussion with him and the member for St. John, and then he came back. I mean, it's land that was there during the last decade. Almost 1,000 plots of land. 1,000 plots of land. They did absolutely nothing to arrest the housing situation in this country. Ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, and they don't want us. They don't want us when we are dealing with certain issues to say that we shouldn't go back. But how else? We have to let the people know why we cannot move forward until we have put certain things in place. So I'm hoping, Mr. Speaker, that we will be able to come back to this House with other acquisitions. I mean, some members could be a little outrageous, like the member for St. Joseph. He came to me with this plan. He wants 500 lots in St. Joseph. I mean, he taking land out of agriculture. I mean, we can't promise you that we can do that. But we will be back in this House. I don't care who said that we are creating a land bank and we are not tackling the housing problems in the way that we would like to tackle them. But if the last administration had put the infrastructure, the vital infrastructure in place, we would not be in this situation. So we now have to go back with the policies that we had in the past, assisted by members of the private sector. And I must say, not only the officers in the ministry are very excited that for the first time, for a long time, they're being asked to do things, and they're working. They are working. The member for St. Thomas would say, energized. But the private sector, they are, I mean, you get calls every month. They are willing to help. The plantation owners, they are willing to help. They are willing to donate their lands. You know, and when you talk to them, I mean, nobody came, nobody asked anything. I mean, you know, one wonders whether they were interested in their charges, their constituents. What were they doing in the 10 years of the last decade? So, Mr. Speaker, I am very glad that we have been able to come to this Parliament with measures like this, and you can be assured that we will be back for the acquisition of lands in areas, whether it is on the periphery of existing villages, or whether it is in areas where persons have an interest in ensuring that they can make some contribution to the supplementing the housing stock in this country. I'm obliged to you.
I'm obliged to. Before the honourable member speak, His Honour the Speaker is on his way here.
I beg to move that this resolution do not pass. Speaker coming.
The Speaker is coming in here. The Speaker is coming. So.
Good morning to all. Speak. Want to speak? Speak. Honourable Member for St. Lucie.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise to support this resolution brought by the Honourable Member for the St. Andrew, the Honourable Minister of Housing. Housing has always been, for the most part, a problem, perhaps in not just Barbados, but in many countries across the world, across the region. You just don't seem to have the amount of houses to satisfy the demand or the needs within the particular area. What has been the policy or the position of Barbados Labour Party administrations is that we have always tried to create that environment and create that to work steadfastly on satisfying that demand wherever possible. If you look at a number of housing estates, you look into this country, in the city, for sure you have places like which we have done, like London-Bourne, we've done Rosemont, we've done some in Deacon's Farm. Over the years, the record and the history of the Barbados Labour Party as it relates to housing has been, I would say, stellar. We seek to meet the needs of the people. And as much as perhaps persons may not want to hear this, what we had in the last 10 years, masquerading as helping people, we now recognize as a government that it was just a charade. And what that plan did, you had houses being built, I am told, in parish land. They had some, what I determined, and I don't know if it's unparliamentary, Mr. Speaker, but some huts in Lancaster 1 and 2. Unfairing ordinary Barbadians, masquerading as though you are trying to help with a problem, but in fact, creating a worse problem. Because it should never be that a new administration has come into office and the Honourable Minister of Housing has his hands virtually tied based on policy of a last administration. And you would hear the stories, Mr. Speaker, I don't know if you've heard them, but I've heard, where persons have gone into units and have been told not to pay. That is absolutely ridiculous, because not paying means that people in your constituency, Mr. Speaker, in St. Philip West, people in St. Lucie, my constituency, housing has not been able as yet to do anything there because the hands of the minister has been tied, and the National Housing Corporation, because of the lack of funds to carry out the work which is necessary to assist people. And that has been as a result of bad management, bad policy by the last administration. There's talk about how many people get kickbacks and how hands were passed back. Too much stealing there. And now we have this issue to deal with. But we are a government, and the Barbados Labour Party has always been a party that has been committed to the people. And whatever hand we have been dealt, we will play it. And we will come out on top. And that is the commitment we made to the people of Barbados when we went to them throughout all our Rub and Shoulders programs, throughout almost over 2 years of being on the ground, and now almost 2 years of being the government. And the people have given us their commitment. They've said to us, look, we believe you can do the job. And they gave us the tools, the power, all that we need, all 30 seats to do this job. And we are not cowards, or we are not going to run and blame, but we must keep in the minds of the people that the situation is the way it is because of what happened. And however, we are not standing on that. We are doing all that we can to assist. The Rock Hall situation did not just start in 2018. The Rock Hall situation was prior to that. This administration has come into office, and the Prime Minister has committed to fixing and have given the directive to the Cabinet to deal with the Rock Hall situation, Mr. Speaker, sir. We have some lands at Chance Hall. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, I would love to be able to get a few spots, etc., for the people of St. Lucie. And I know that once everything is sorted out, I believe there will be some left for them too. But we are assisting in the national effort of removing that situation, dealing with that situation at Rock Hall. We have, and we've heard, a resolution has come before this House already to deal with Collyton, 71 lots at Collyton. And every day, my office is not just bombarded, but people are requesting they need a little piece of the rock. This is the people of St. Lucie. And we are happy. We're happy for that. The ministry of, and let me say where the Collyton position was concerned. Collyton was something, was brought by the other administration. But what did they do? As in everything else that you could imagine, you just acquire and just leave it there. People need to understand that the government, this administration, has been doing a lot of work that could have and should have been done already long before us. And we do not claim that everything that we do is something new, because it's not. But the fact that it has been started and just left for years. We in the Ministry of Transport, for instance, we came and we found an IDB agreement to do some roads. And all we hear about, there's a plan, but you can't drive on a plan. You got to drive on a road. So we did the roads. And we did, I don't care which administration, but as I say, you cannot drive on a plan. You drive on a road. You cannot live on a promise or an acquisition. You got to get a house or a spot to put the house on to live. That is why the Minister of Housing, the Honourable Member for St. Andrew, is moving with haste to do all those things that were left undone so that the people of Barbados can benefit and benefit tremendously. There is land, not just land. The National Housing Corporation, there's a project at River Bay. And I spoke to the Minister of Housing about this. which was started, and that too needs to be completed. Because people need to have something in their hand to say, well, yes, this is mine. Another project left by the wayside, Mr. Speaker, sir. So this administration must be applauded. And the honourable members for St. Andrew and St. John, and I'm sure there are issues in St. John in relation to housing as well. There are issues in St. Michael South, perhaps relating to housing, especially, and as a matter of fact, especially in those rural areas. There are problems in relation to occupancy and the density of it in housing developments like the Pine. And those areas which have to be addressed as well. And I'm sure, Mr. Speaker, sir, you have persons in your constituency too who are looking and who are expecting to have their housing issues addressed. And this administration will do so. In a tight situation, in a BERT program, we are still finding the means and the ways, the creative ways which we can assist in every area in this country. We have not thrown up our hands and say, well, the last administration did, so we can do. We are working, every minister of the cabinet, working hard, because we have made a commitment to the people of Barbados, and we have to deliver to them. The honourable members in this house, who they may not be in the cabinet, but they have needs within their constituencies. And we are working to deliver on them too, because we are all in this together, Mr. Speaker. All of Barbados is behind this government because they give us the right, they give us the vote. And I know there are some persons that might say in a negative way. But our leader, the Honourable Prime Minister, Honourable Member for St. Michael North East, made a statement, give me the vote and watch me. And people seem to be amazed that after just a mere, almost, not quite yet, almost 2 years, but we're getting there, we have been able to begin to turn this country around, Mr. Speaker. And the atmosphere, confidence has returned. Confidence by the investors have returned to this country. Barbadians walking through the streets of Bridgetown, or through the districts in Pike Corner, or somewhere in Welsh, feel a sense of what I would say, a sense of belonging, of having a country again. They feel, Mr. Speaker, sir, confident that we will get out of this. And I am confident that we will get out of this situation. You know, so much so, Mr. Speaker, that after just, we came to the very brink. We came to the very brink as a country. And people are so confident, Mr. Speaker, sir, and I'm sure that you experienced this. After just under 2 years, the demands have become virtually greater because people feel that cheese on, as they were saying, Bajan parlance. This government has delivered and we can do this and we can do that. I have sat here, Mr. Speaker, sir, and requests coming through on your phone. People talking about the jobs. People they're talking about the housing, the sports. They're talking about all these things because people believe the government has done so well. And Mr. Speaker, there's even evidence of that. We in St. Lucie, I'm about to conclude the month of regathering. And Mr. Speaker, the results have been phenomenal. What we have seen in terms of people attending, in terms of spend, not just coming to events, in terms of spend, Mr. Speaker. And that is all part of the effort of this government to generate economic growth in this country, where money is passed, money is spent, so that the country grows and we are able to do all those things. I am confident, Mr. Speaker, sir, that before this term, we're going to be able to get some, we will get some houses. Houses will be delivered. We will get some buses. In MTW, we have delivered equipment. We have delivered a couple jobs, both at MTW and NCC. The roads will come. Rest assured, the roads will come. Welding at this point in time is being done. We did Queens Village. We finished Flagstaff. All left with the past administration, Mr. Speaker, sir. We start in Lamins. You all remember St. Joseph, and we got to finish there too. And we got to get to St. Thomas and those areas that, you know, persons have the confidence in this government that we will deliver. And we are working hard to deliver in the Ministry of Transport, Works and Maintenance, just as the Ministry of Housing and NHC is working to deliver too, because these are two critical areas. We've had some changes at the QEH, in health, in the Ministry of Youth, and the Ministry of Education working now. We have phenomenal performance in the Ministry of Energy and Water Resources. With all the issues combined that we had to deal with as a government, Barbadians can say they're now beginning to see a bit of light. There is hope for Barbados. There's confidence that has returned, Mr. Speaker. And I'm thankful for the Minister to bring this resolution, and there are many more, I believe, that will come, not just on housing. The Ministry of the Environment has done well. And let me tell you how they've done well. And I want to thank them from the floor of this Parliament today. There was a place in St. Lucia, and you heard me mention it when I spoke sometime last year, a place called River Bay that had issues. In less than 3 weeks, the National Conservation Commission restored that facility. They have done tremendously well in terms of beautification in the constituency of St. Lucie. They have done tremendously well now with the tree planting program that they are undertaking. On Friday, I expect to plant some more trees, Mr. Minister. Because I'm working with the private sector too to get involved. You see, that is what government does. The government does not only do all the work, but government has worked, and this Labour Party administration and other administration has taken the lead. We've always taken the lead, but we've learned how to work with the private sector to get things done in this country. That is how we have operated. And I want to thank, from the floor of this Parliament, Mr. Speaker, all those agencies. We have seen the transformation happening, for sure, as a result of my observations at the regathering events and so on in this country. And I am sure that this will continue to spread in every other parish for this year. And I'm confident it will bring economic benefits to the ordinary business person, the small entrepreneur, the nut seller, the fruit vendor, the one that just will sell just natural juices. This is all part of the creative economy, where we utilize these things, and we let people utilize these things, these opportunities, to bring economic benefit. And when that happens, the government will get money to be able to build the houses and so on that are required. That will assist as part of the process. Mr. Speaker, I have no difficulty whatsoever in supporting this resolution here today. I'm obliged to you.
Honourable Member for St. John.
Mr. Speaker, I fully support this acquisition that was tabled today by the Minister of Housing. Mr. Speaker, I want to assure the Honourable Member for St. Lucie that, yes, assistance will be coming to St. Lucie as it relates to housing solutions within his constituency. The former Minister of Housing, Mr. Speaker, had a fixation with a runway in the constituency of St. Lucie. And I am pleased today, Mr. Speaker, to let that individual know that now the Ministry of Housing and Lands is sitting on the tarmac ready to take off. Mr. Speaker, everything now that is being done in the Ministry of Housing and Lands is congruent with Sustainable Development Goal number 11 that speaks to affordable housing. And I am very, very pleased this morning because in St. John, I campaign on a mantra of home drums beating first. Mr. Speaker, this morning, I am very, very pleased to posit here that a housing development will come to the constituency of St. John in the not too distant future. And it is proposed, Mr. Speaker, that at Pool St. John, 180 lots will be developed for housing. But I will expand a little bit in terms of what I mentioned earlier about the preparation of what is happening within the Ministry of Housing and Lands, because there's some projects that are being proposed. The Honourable Member for St. Andrew would have referred to them or referred to some of them, so I want to expand on that. The Honourable Member for St. Lucie indicated, yes, he's looking at solutions. Proposed at Colleton, St. Lucie, 71 lots. At Chancery Lane, 200 lots, Mr. Speaker. Lancaster 3, that the Honourable Member for St. Andrew mentioned, 180 residential lots and 3 commercial lots. Ferry Valley Ridge, 58 lots. Dodds North, 162 lots. Dodds South, 160, and I would have mentioned just now at Pool, 180 lots are being proposed with the understanding and the provision that more can come to the constituency of St. John. But all total that I would have just mentioned, we're looking at 1,014 solutions in the not too distant future. So yes, Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Housing and Lands, we're actively looking to improve what is happening in terms of the housing landscape in Barbados. Recently, the ministry would have put out a request for proposal in terms of the development of houses that can withstand maybe a Cat 4. We had 9 entities submitting via that request for proposals. To date, 27 designs were submitted by those 9 entities. And in the not too distant future, maybe in the next 2 weeks or so, we will be able to make a decision as it relates to those particular houses that will now be seen on the landscape of Barbados coming from the Ministry of Housing and Lands. And Mr. Speaker, it is evident that Minister of Housing would have mentioned the amount of hits, the amount of requests. We're currently sitting, last count, on 20,000 requests for housing solutions from the public at the Ministry of Housing and Lands. The reality is that the funding, as he would have identified, that we would require to trigger a lot of these housing solutions are not currently there. But hope springs eternal in the Ministry of Housing and Lands, and we are hoping to fuel that plane that is sitting on the runway to start the process. Mr. Speaker, I know that, there is a large cry in terms of housing for, or requests for houses at some of the established locations. But I want to just put it out there in terms of what is currently available, so persons who possess the means of acquiring houses at some of our existing locations can probably come to the ministry and make the formal application to source some of those housings. At Lancaster 1, there were 38 housing solutions. To date, we have sold 32 of those, and there are 6 that are available for purchase. This is Lancaster 1. At Lancaster 2, we would have sold 44 solutions there. There were 45. We only have 1 outstanding. There were 11 commercial lots at Lancaster 2, and we have 5 of those lots remaining. At Parish Land, Mr. Speaker, there are 117 solutions at that particular location. We have 20 that are actually available now for purchase. At River in St. Philip, Riverview in St. Philip, there were 17 houses. There are now 8 that are available. The others were already allocated, and the mortgage process is being undertaken there. Mr. Speaker, it is okay for that cavalry of voices to be out there saying that the Ministry of Housing are actually doing nothing, but we in the ministry, we know otherwise. It is not often that a lot of the information is in the public's domain, so hence today I'm trying to rectify the situation by sharing some of the information as to what is happening in the Ministry of Housing, what we're purporting to do as it relates to low-cost housing in this country. Mr. Speaker, the electrical upgrade, and I know the Honourable Member who is representing Haynesville is very pleased about the work that is being conducted at that particular housing estate. Mr. Speaker, there are approximately 2,600 units that were identified for urgent repairs as it relates to the electrical installation. We have started the pilot process in the Haynesville housing units, and to date we have 44 of those. There are 44 blocks, in Haynesville that we're targeting in the initial pilot. We have 9 contractors who are conducting the work in that particular location. The next phase will go to Deacons. So we are trying to eliminate the issues and the problems that are quite acute in Haynesville first, because that is the area that several of the reports, we know that there were 4 or 5 house fires in that particular location that were triggered by electrical issues. So we're actually actively involved in the process of resolving that. One of the other areas, Mr. Speaker, that I would need to shed some light on is the wells repair program. And prior to the unfortunate accident that occurred in the Pine, we would have started the process of looking at some of the wells in the housing estates that were problematic. We would have identified 135 sewer systems, and sewer systems is broken down into wells and septic tanks. And these were the ones that we deemed to be most critical, the ones that we figured that we had to put something in place to rectify the situation because of the safety issues that were involved. To date, we would have started at least 75 of those units. There are 30 of them that were completed. Because of the situation in the Pine that required almost immediate attention, we subcontracted 3 entities to help us as it relates to resolving the issues in the Pine. And we are satisfied to date that those particular contractors are doing what they're supposed to do to rectify and to remedy the situation in the Pine. It is possible that as we move across those other estates that we may have to again look in the particular locale to see if we can find subcontractors to assist the National Housing Corporation in relation to cleaning up what is happening with the wells in those locations. The 20-year program, Minister would have alluded to that. We have a situation where initially there were 3,076 persons who were given their units free of cost. Subsequent to that, there are 45 that would have been added to that particular count. One of the problems, Mr. Speaker, that we are having as it relates to this particular program is the fact that persons would have constructed or add-on structure to the existing units. In most cases, it is wall structures that were added, making it extremely difficult for the surveyors to be able to conduct their work and to provide accurate plot plans for those persons who qualify. However, at this point in time, 698 surveys were completed, certified by those surveys, and they're ready for persons who qualify for the particular program. But it is exceedingly difficult, as you can imagine, to actually map areas where you have wall structure that are either in front or at the back of these buildings. So that is one of the big bugbears as it relates to this situation. Mr. Speaker, in terms of the terrace units, we are aware that there's a need to expand that particular program. And Minister would have mentioned the price tag that is attached to that. $30.5 million to do housing units as it relates to new locations. And we have identified those locations that are ripe, that are ready to take these particular new terrace units. Unfortunately, like I said, $30.5 million is not readily available. But I will share some of the locations or those locations that were identified for this particular project. Rock Close, Wildy, we're looking at 4 terrace units there. Rock Avenue in Wildy, a similar 4. Deacons in Rosemont, 14. Oxnards in Haynesville, 16 quads. Country Road, 16 high-rise units. Coombs House, White Park, 32 high-rise units. Parishland, Christchurch, 16 quads, and Exmouth, St. Michael, 20, for a total of 122. Mr. Speaker, the reality is that we, like I said, are constantly looking for avenues and constantly looking for where there's land to develop housing. In St. John, that particular 180 housing solutions, the lots that are coming, is a result of what we term to be ribbon development, meaning that there's land that is adjacent to highways where you do not have to necessarily put in infrastructure. You do not need to put in a road. Water supply is there, electricity is there. So those lots are readily available. And one of the things I would want to suggest to the other members of this honorable chamber is that if they can possibly as well identify locations within their constituency that can be used for housing development in terms of that ribbon development that I mentioned, that they should send the information to the Ministry of Housing and Lands for consideration. Mr. Speaker, not so long ago in St. John, I would have presented an opportunity again for persons who are living at Welch, and I know this notion of squatters is something that is very much in vogue, but the Ministry of Housing and Lands was able to change something that was festering in St. John for more than 50 years, I believe. And it took our administration to come into government to rectify the situation. Similarly, the housing development that I mentioned in St. John, it has been more than 20 years, close to 3 decades since any type of development of this nature would have touched the landscape of St. John. And I stand here today, Mr. Speaker, humbled by the fact that we in the Ministry of Housing and Lands would have been able to trigger such a development in St. John. And one of the things that is interesting about this particular development, because we're hoping to work in concert with the Ministry of Transport and Works to push down the cost of these developments by having that particular ministry cut roads at the locations, Mr. Speaker. And if we can do that, it means that those individuals who reside in St. John, and I expect that persons outside of St. John too would probably source some of the lands that are available. Those persons who are working at gas stations, those persons that do what we might deem to be menial work, would now have an opportunity to be involved in a process of owning their own home. And Mr. Speaker, it is one of those things that I am exceedingly pleased about. The fact that for so long, absolutely no housing developments of note happened across this country. For 10 years, all of this was possible, Mr. Speaker. All of the things that I would have identified here, all of it possible. But then you had a minister who embraced inertia. So therefore, nothing was happening in the Ministry of Housing and Lands. Like I said, there was a fixation about constructing a runway. And I don't know who was going to live on a runway in the constituency of St. Lucie, but that was his fixation. I am told, and I'm trying to see if Minister and myself can find the drawings for that runway in St. Lucie. But maybe it was just a figment of his imagination. But we are actively on the job. We are actively on the job. Our minister would have mentioned the push that is happening within the ministry to ensure that a number of the projects that we have are coming to fruition. I know that we have started to identify those derelict houses and those spots that are available across the country as well to see how best we can look to press all of those vacant lands and those derelict buildings back into use. Mr. Speaker, one of the things that, again, is happening within the ministry as it relates to housing, as it relates to sustainable housing, is the not so much mentioned pit toilet eradication. And, Mr. Speaker, I am one who hope at some point in time, before this particular term is out, that I could stand in this House of Assembly and say that there are absolutely no pit toilets in the constituency of St. John and by extension all over this country. And we are working assiduously in rural development to do exactly that. I know that we're having some pushbacks from landlords who believe that we should not come on their property and improve the life of persons who are renting from them. They figure that maybe if we convert those pit toilets into waterborne facilities, that it would be problematic for them. But the truth is, Mr. Speaker, that every single person within this country should have a certain level of pride and dignity in terms of these particular conditions. And I would hope that in the future going forward as well, that not a single youngster from the constituency of St. John in 10 years' time will be able to say anywhere that I would have experienced using a pit toilet. Because part of the push, Mr. Speaker, for all of us should be to move persons from that level of poverty to some kind of comfort zone. And we are doing it. The Honourable Member for St. Andrew and myself, we are doing it in the Ministry of Housing and Lands. We are moving fast to a point where we can see tangible outcomes to all of the efforts that are happening from the technical persons within the ministry, all of the ideas that are birthday, that are fruitful, we are embracing, because we believe that the only way to get the job done is to embrace staff and to treat the knowledge that would have been there for a number of years as it relates to housing. So I am looking forward, Mr. Speaker, when the acquisition at Harry Smith as it relates to housing come to fruition, where we will have another set of houses at that particular location. I know the Prime Minister would have indicated, and we're actively looking to see that as far as possible, where we are developing housing solutions, that the lot sizes are at an adequate amount of square footage, namely between 35 to 4,000 square feet, because that provides an opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to construct a house that is, in my view, livable. And I'm speaking from a background of having a little bit of knowledge in terms of design, in terms of construction, and hence I'm eagerly awaiting to see what those RFPs will throw up in terms of the design. So, Mr. Speaker, again, as I come to a conclusion here with my contribution to this particular acquisition, I would want to send forth to all and sundry that the Ministry of Housing and Lands, like I said, everything that we're doing is congruent with Sustainable Development Goal number 11. We're working to ensure that affordable housing is paramount in terms of how we treat to the process of housing development in Barbados going forward. We have had some hits, some individuals from, let me say, the banking sector, where there's a lot of liquidity, and they're interested and their focus is the same as us in the Ministry of Housing and Lands. They're interested in ensuring that low-cost housing is available for persons who are their clientele, and we have a similar focus in the ministry. So what we're hoping to do is to fuse that private entity along with the ministry to ensure that at the end of the day, a number of persons that we're able to dwindle that 20,000 little by little to ensure that those persons are that they receive, Mr. Speaker, affordable housing. So I have absolutely no difficulty in supporting this acquisition at Harry Smith for housing and the hotel sector. I'm obliged.
Honourable Member for St. Michaelis.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No. The Honourable Member, Mr. Andra, asked me to sing some praise for him, and I will. Sir, this is an important debate. To some people, it is just mundane and might not be as, some people use the word sexy as many other subject matters. But I could not sit here and don't speak on the behalf of the homeless. I could not sit here and don't reconnect with my history to know that we are people struggle from a landless background, a homeless background, a powerless background as a result of slavery and colonialism. So we started from scratch, and we have to cut out a space, a land space in this country for the poor. And sir, this debate could not escape me because we all know the life of living in things that we call homes. Just a little shelter, and we call it home. Not having the comforts of other persons who also use the word home and the word housing. And I want to speak about the experience of people who live in challah houses, still live in less than humane conditions, and this government is given the task to make the kind of physical transformation and to create an environment that all of us in here abhor as less than suitable for any human being to live in. A debate on housing cannot and should not escape any of these people in here from this background, with this pigmentation, without remembering life having to use a pit toilet. And so I'm saying to you that without having to go to university to be trained in what constitutes philosophy, the reality is our life experience. If we are grateful, we ought to be able to thank those persons who form a philosophy out of the external forces that drove us to have such experiences. And obviously, the pit toilet would have to be a phenomenon that a minister of the environment would have to pay some attention to. And I will have to pay some attention to the pit toilet because it also, the discharge that goes into a pit toilet also has some form of impact on the environment. So I have to be engaged in this debate, sir. In other words, the Barbados Labour Party has a commitment, like no other government before us, to wrestle this problem to the ground. I know many people offered ideas and tell the general public of Barbados that we are going to eradicate, and that's the word that they use to color it well, we're going to eradicate the dry pits from the landscape of the country. Yet, in my community, I have many. I have, to honor a commitment which I have given to my people in Lakeridge Village from the beginning of my parliamentary career, Lakeridge Village people who sent me here over and over again. That is the place in which Minister Humphrey of South, South what? South, whatever it is, St. Michael South. That is from where he was given birth, the place from which he sprung, the place in which he was acculturated. So I would expect to hear his voice as well, because now that he's been elevated to high office, and even before coming here, socializing among people who never had his experiences, and being considered as an equal, a social equal, probably as a result of being able to enjoy the new appliances of life, where he does not have to sit on a board toilet anymore, but now he can sit on ceramic material and flush. Enjoy these modern sophistications. I will hope that it has not, to some extent, damaged the psyche in such a way that he has actually wiped out the history of his upbringing. And I'm sure that Minister of Health, who also, he has a very important ministry that also touches on these things, and he obviously would have had to live in such circumstances. Some of us might not be able to speak about these things. And some of us might wonder, how can a man speak about these things with a sense of pride? Because it's a very special experience. And it helps us to empathize with people who live in poor housing conditions and poor social conditions, sir. Most of us who are not described as tenants, we are described as squatters. A word that's been used equally as much as infidel, as an inferior species. We have to wrestle with these things, and nobody understands quite well how these things affect and cloud our thoughts. Because we strongly believe that human beings ought to live in conditions, especially in modern times, with the development of science and technology, in conditions that are far more humane than that. And unfortunately, the private sector, which focus a lot on housing as well, they are only driven to participate in housing development because large profits are there. The state has tried over the years to lead the way, to go beyond profit making, and understand that it has a responsibility to its own people to do everything that it can to uplift the quality of the life of our people. The private sector also, in modern Barbados, ought to be participate more in humanism, in its guidance. They're not going to be here for life. They can't focus exclusively on greed and making money. Take some of the money that they have accumulated over the years, by whatever means, and spend it back on helping poor people to get out of the situation that they're in. The state is in a very difficult position at this juncture in history, with limited resources available to it, with a society that is going further and further into poverty as a result of all that is happening around us. And we can't suppress that, because all the evidence available to us that even caused us to be victorious in the last election clearly indicates that the poverty level in Barbados has increased substantially. We watch people every day as this view of individualism continues to dominate. People every day moving out from their families and trying to live alone in single units. And I use the word unit, that's a broad term, but I don't know what you can call the things that they have to live in. You have now a large percentage in modern Barbados of young men and women living in a house with only 4 sides, with 2 plywood sheets 8x4 on the left side and 2 plywood sheets on the right side, and probably 3 or so at the front and 3 at the back, with no partition, but it's a house. And we also know that as a result of living in those environments, sometimes, especially when you begin to get children, you got other social problems that will develop as well. Because the household, especially the adults, want to be happy sometimes, and they may not take certain things into consideration. So this is the kind of society that the state is expected to do all that it can in order to make the facilities and the conditions more suitable, more conducive to what human beings ought to be living in. And I think that all of us, in all fairness to this debate, all of us ought to participate and express our views about the conditions of other persons who are less fortunate than us. And we see it in New Orleans. We see it in Farnham Land. You see it in Marshall Gap. You see it in Emerton Lane. I see it in the Ivy. I see it in Liquid Village. I see it in Bell Gully. I see it in Baylor's Hill, Martinique. So you see it all in your area. You have an area called the Bell Estate, and the psyche must not be clouded by the expression estate. These are people who are now living on lands and are so classified as squatters. And then there's the bureaucracy that will tell you that these people are living on the land illegally, so they're squatters. So the discussion surrounding their existence begins with the premise that this is a squatter. And then they treat people in the way that you should treat an inferior being, a squatter. So every minute they're going to be running from some government department. That will be accompanied by the Barbados police force in blue and big boots coming to the communities. We have inherited a situation that we have to be committed to, very passionate about it. So this isn't dry talk. This is reality. And in these districts, our mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters and cousins of some of us, and we can't turn our backs on them. We once had a policy when we had little. We had little then in the 1930s and 40s. But every Saturday and Sunday, the community will come together and make cement. They used to make cement blocks in neighborhoods. Cement blocks. They will get wood from the lumber companies, and the community will come together and construct a house with what we call self-help housing programs. So I believe that the state itself, especially having to carry the burden at present, the state may have to look to see how the state can contribute in some small way the materials for the construction of housing and allow the community to construct the house itself. The state can work in collaboration with some of the government agencies like the Vocational Training Board or the Polytechnic and help poor people to build houses, not houses constructed with 6 penny nails and 8 penny nails. That ain't cutting it in modern Barbados with the environmental changes, climate changes in the country. And the state can preside by supervising the construction without having to carry the burden of the cost of labor. I help poor people not to have us live a lifetime, never own a house, never own a piece of land in their lifetime. It has to be done. I know that we might have a focus on encouraging people to invest and take up large tracts of land. But we can do something extraordinary in terms of claiming a large piece of land somewhere and develop a massive community project so we can concentrate all the utility services in one location. And you just move and create a community. We got enough land. And the land is being converted from out of agriculture purposes and used sometimes for massive housing development. No house that costs $50,000, you don't use that land for. Because the perception before was that the National Housing Corporation, not this government, the National Housing Corporation must make returns on the investment. So nothing is based on any strong commitment to helping poor people out of the state. It is only a meaningful project if there's returns on the investment. Not returns of happiness, not returns of health, not proper conditions, not near the coastal areas of Barbados, because that land you can't get any of that because it's not for people like us. You can't get none of that. You could have get it before when there was slavery, when there was moving inland to plant sugar. But now they want all. And worst of all, they not only want all, but they want to block off the beaches in Barbados as well. And then we have to be wrestling with which agency has the authority to tell that body not to do this on the land space of which agency, and we have to be actually in conflict with each other, trying to dog dance and help these people to be able to do the things that they're doing that is unfair to poor people in Barbados. So you got a beach and you got people taking boulders and rolling it across the beach lands. People actually creating peninsulas, pushing the land out further and further with a big peak out in the land space. And people calling me as Minister of the Environment, and other ministers, and asking them, what is this? We can no longer walk on the coastal area of Western. That's the location there where Carew, the famous calypsonian, died. I have another problem where other people doing other things that they should not do at Bows Beach. So, poor people, I know the Minister of Housing said he hasn't heard that term for a long time, but if you can find a better term, I'm not going to talk them marginalized, this is not poetry, and vulnerable and all that. Poor people now have to find a place in the ocean. And that now will pose another problem for the Minister of Maritime Affairs. Because he now has to find land space in the ocean floating on some kind of, I don't know, what do you call the things that you float with? You have floats over the ocean in order to get a house. That's where we are. Sir, and I think that I can talk about housing in generic terms, how many houses we construct over the years, how many houses, how many pieces of land we make available over the years. I want to talk about now too. We need to have an intensive sites and services program. If the state can't build the house, if the state can't build the houses, I believe that we are in that difficult position as a consequence of the economic conditions that we inherited, and as a result of being placed in a necktie by the IMF and whatever other programs. But we have to find innovative ways so our people can still enjoy life. You get older every day. Every day. And you know how it hurts for somebody to live an entire lifetime and never had an opportunity even to go in a toilet that is flush? You know what I'm saying? Never had the opportunity in life unless to visit a friend's home or go to a business place and ask, can I use your washroom? And sometimes they don't even know if you push down the hand or if you push your hand on the water. Because it's not part of your culture. It's not part of your culture. Why went to the hospital one time and they gave me a basin. I didn't know at this time to wash my face. I went to start drinking water. All these things have happened. All these things have happened when you grow up in certain conditions, sir. And I really, sir, I feel like this like, Minister, I can't go to no Buckingham Palace. If I start to eat with knife or fork, I can put down a knife, and sometimes I might put down a fork, right? And I would go back to my traditions, African traditions, I put my hand in food and eat something, right? All of that. And sometimes I want to smell it and all of that. So we move from district. We move from district to district. We moved from district, sir, to district over the years. Normatic. We had to be, we live. But, I was born in Titchburn, House Cross Road near the Ivy. I live in the Titchburn, the Ivy, back to Titchburn, Haggett Hall, then you come back to Titchburn, and I was one of the fortunate ones. There are people in here that live in about 20 locations in their lifetime. I'm not talking about visiting a friend or a girlfriend. I'm talking about every minute they had to get the pillowcases and plastic bags and put the clothes in it, come out after 6 o'clock or so in the night, push it in the back of a car of a friend or on the back of a truck. Sometimes they move the mattress, the car move it early because the mattress don't look so appealing. Next time they got one chair. I know when my mother had one chair, man. One. Then they got one chair. They're much clothes. So I can't even tell them to move in a suitcase. So just push it in the pillowcase and they move. That is the life that we experience in the 20th century. If we are a progressive government, we have to demonstrate beyond words. With whatever limitations we have, financial limitations, because prior to the 1950s, we had those limitations, but the self-help program, with the money coming out of Panama and Costa Rica, we were able to build chattel houses with the gable top, with the ventilation in the roof. Nobody had to push up windows and all that. That was the reality. And we have to give people an opportunity because they don't want to live in an environment where they believe that this country has nothing to offer them. So everybody that gets up every morning wants to know if you can get them on the family labor program. You know that's the reality, sir. Young men come to you every day and say, well, boss, you can't get me on the family labor program. People want to get out of here. That is how these people mashed up Barbados over the last few years. That every young man wants an opportunity. Boss, you could get an American visa for me. You could not bring enough airplanes at Grand Liana's airport free. If you take a Mexican sport, free. You could not bring enough planes at Grand Liana's airport if you tell Barbados you got an opportunity to rent planes at the airport waiting for you. There'll be war up there because of the state and the country that we inherit in 2018. You got people in this country telling you, all of these men in this parliament, all of these men that stand behind me are men of integrity. You think that poor people don't know foolishness? But they expect something of us so we can get in here and stand on ceremony and talk real pretty about housing, and talk real pretty about employment, and talk real pretty about investment and everything, but we got to deliver. We have to deliver. And they want a housing program, one way or the other. And they would like sometimes my views to be respected on how it can be done. I have land in Barker's Road. I have land that the government acquired in Barker's Road before 2008, on 2nd Avenue, I get home. We can't build on it. Subdivide it. Subdivide the land. You can put it for sale, and those who are fortunate enough to have a down payment, if the bank also facilitate you, or mortgage finance, or whatever agency, and you got at least enough of 10% that you pay on the land, you got to ask the bank to demonstrate a social conscience too. Or the bank's looking for profit. Everything is about profit, profit, profit over people, profit, profit, profit all the time. So the banks don't care about poor people. The insurance companies don't care about poor people. They insure a house, we call it a chattel house. And everybody trying to find a way not to help the poor. This government must make a difference. It must make a difference. Don't let it face the charges at the end of its 5-year term of wherever you go, you hear it every day. Don't let it be said that politicians are bare talk. We hear in the community bare talk. Promises, 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 promises. People want action. And whatever is the truth, we must tell it to our people. These are the conditions that we are experiencing. I don't want to learn. I don't want to learn all the, we call it acronyms for international organizations and believe that I'm bright or anything like that. I want some help so that at least if I make one significant contribution in my lifetime. You know, I've got some people like to talk how much land they get, how much housing and apartments to construct and all of that. One of them about to go to jail now. That's not my commitment. If I die tomorrow morning and they found one pair of shoes, pair of rubber slippers with the heels eaten down in my bedroom, does not matter to me. What I'm going to thank you all for in advance is, and I hope that the policy still remains, that at least my family don't have to try to go around with a basket and ask for money in order to bury me, because the state has already committed itself to do that for me. Right? I don't expect to have any special ceremony or anything like that. And my contribution must be that I have made a contribution that is so significant that it has helped to give direction in the form of the policy of a government and the programs of the government to help uplift the poor. The poor. So that I can walk about in my community after 6 o'clock and 7. And I can continue to park my car outside in my community because the people from which I sprung, the people who shaped me, the institutions in the community that are responsible for making me who I am, that all of them can look back and say that I have made a contribution, however significant it is. They got people who went in here that nobody can even remember one word that they ever say in English or Portuguese. Not one. That other leader here, the only word he left inside here that anybody can remember is don't panic.
Honourable member has 2 more minutes.
So I am hoping that the minister, I know he's engaged in serious conversation otherwise, but I'm hoping that the minister heard me carefully. And I'm hoping that I would be able, before this 5-year period closes off, I'm hoping that I will see a resolution to the problem of sewage in the Zone 1 area by having some kind of that might not be entirely up to the Minister of Housing and Land. I'm hoping that I'll be able to see a reverse osmosis plant, sewage plant, whatever technical terms used, so that the people of the belt can enjoy the best of life like everybody else. My Lawrence Hill people, Mays Road people, Prout Road people, the people all through that entire community, Cross House, Cross Road, people living on lands because they had no other way to go, not because they're delinquent or ignorant to the ownership of the land, but they had no way to go. You don't know how it is with a man walking about the street all in the night asking, I've been on this street now for the last 2 weeks. It happens in urban Barbados every day. I've been on the street for the last 2 weeks up and down, cannot find a house to rent. Because he can't rent the house for $800 a month or work for her $75 a week. It's impossible. He has to do something injurious in order to supplement that. Or she has to do something injurious. And if I could at least resolve something small inside my community, I would believe that I have made a meaningful contribution, and this party could be given the credit that some of the most illustrious leaders in this country, that we attribute to them all right now. What has Grant Lee Adams done? What has Aaron Barr done? What has Owen Arthur done? I can't say that much about anybody else. But these are the people I know did something. I would like to know that this government, led by the first female Prime Minister of Barbados, in the middle of an economic crisis, we have done something extraordinary. But in all this, we have contributed something meaningful to poor people. Poor people. People, not profiteers, poor people. That's what I want to see, sir. And this resolution demands of me that I make this contribution, because I just could not escape this discussion without making some small contribution and asking that I have the privilege during this term of office to witness this kind of physical transformation on the national landscape of Barbados, both in land distribution, land ownership, and home ownership of poor people in Barbados. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the suspension of the sitting until 2:25 p.m. today.
The question is that this honourable chamber be suspended until 2:25 p.m. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. This honourable chamber stands suspended until 2:25 p.m.